Welcome to Business Success Tips, where you learn to make more money in less time and have more fun, especially the more fun part. And I'm Paul Sanneman. I'm your host. I'm founder of Contractor Staffing Source, and we help contractors build great teams. I have as my guest today Tyler Williams from Mammoth Marketing. How did you come up with the name Mammoth Marketing? I'm just curious. That sounds interesting to me.
Based out of Alaska, or at least that's where we were based out of, and I'm still here. And it's, one of those things where you're like, let's find something that's regional-ish without being too on the nose, and Mammoth worked. Like that's the one we kept coming back.
Too long a nose. I got the
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So you basically market for plumbers, right?
Yeah, we serve not just home services, but one step lower, which is I'm primarily serving plumbers.
So tell me, what do you do for plumbers?
So it's a mixture of marketing services, and of course, marketing services can be varied wildly. So a lot of times starts with the website, Google Business, making sure that people are getting found first, and then how do we drive traffic with, and the platforms that we handle the most are Facebook, Instagram, the Meta properties, and then Google's
Right.
properties, everything from local service ads to search ads. But then also what I think people tend to forget is that Google has display and YouTube as well. And those are also really important into the mix on top of that. So beyond that, it's, text messaging, emails, and things along those lines. And our services change depending on sort of what the need is over the years. And so who knows what will
So I have a question for you. There's a lot of debate out there on this whole AI thing, right? I mean, some people say throw everything into AI, it all magically does it for you and post everything and you're good. And other people say don't use AI because Google will detect it and kill your waiting. And I don't know. So what's your position on how much AI and when to use it and how it works, and does it make a difference?
So, okay, I've got number one, does it hurt you is the first question, right? Like actively utilizing it, does it hurt you? I don't think so, but the jury's out. Like it hasn't been around long enough and used enough for people to really make a distinction. Google's said kind of people can take it a couple ways. Google tends to talk in riddles sometimes, and AI seems to be one of those zones. But overall, you got to think about utilizing AI in the way that people care about it. Like with Google, they just want people to use their search engine. So even if what AI outputs, I think you're okay so long as it's good content. And how do you make good content with AI depends on the guy behind the scenes, prompting it, steering it, tooling it. It's just another tool, and you got to learn how to use it. I don't really think it's like inherently going to be bad or good, but it's just changing like the speed of content.
Well, I
Like,
mean, I've had, AI write blogs for me and it does a way better job than I do.
well, but I would say the output depends on the input, right? Like it has, like if you say, write me a blog about, recruiting or staffing or whatever, like it's
Right.
going to kick out what it feels like is a good blog based on what it learned, but so will everybody else in your market. So the trick is to make sure that it gives you a version of that, but is tailored for the way that you like to communicate. And I've tried this on my own thing. Like I will upload my YouTube video transcripts and be like, write a blog around this. Give me 5 main points and give me 3, with headlines. And then I'll go through, proofread it, tweak a few things, and then boom, I'm good to go. It's way faster, but I'm guiding the tool. I'm not just letting it run amok.
Mhm. So how do you think this is going to change as AI gets better and better over the next few, 6 months? Because I see people, no offense, plumbers and contractors generally are slow to adapt technology. I think Luddite might be the right word or whatever, right? And so, and maybe in the past it didn't matter a lot, or it mattered less because if you had a good reputation, you were the best plumber in town, people knew you, that was all good. But what if somebody comes into town, either that or when your competitors decide, screw this, I'm going to spend, whatever, 5,000 a month on marketing and you're not, or whatever. Are they going to win?
Okay, so the way I view it with like marketing budgets and like somebody blowing into town with capital, let's say, which happens because you got a lot of private equity skirting around right now. Um, I think look at the way political campaigns operate. Like what those are, political campaigns, 3 months, boom, bunch of media into a zone. Usually the one without major upsets and without major issues, the one with the biggest budget wins. And this is the same thing. What you're vying for is influence. So yeah, if somebody comes by and they're dumping a whole bunch of money into the market, yes, they're going to win the market. And a lot of times, if you don't have the budget to compete with like your whole service area, what I tell people to combat this, it's like, if you got a smaller budget, what do? Well, you make sure your smaller budget is just as effective in a smaller zone. So then you take down your geography and you do try and be more compelling, because that does make a difference. Like, creative matters. And so we'll see how AI influences all that in the grand scheme of things. But I think sometimes people are trying to like win the war before they even won the battle, sort of deal.
Okay. So how does this, you work with lots of plumbers, right?
Mhm.
Who's succeeding using marketing, and how or why are they, what makes them, what allows them to we get more revenue? It's all ROI, return on investment in marketing, right? It comes down to how much you're going to spend and how much you get back.
Yep.
So what do you consider reasonable ROI, and where have you done that? You don't have to give names exactly, but how does that work? I mean, can you actually show, well, I spent X thousand dollars and I got Y thousand dollars back?
So I was just asked this question on Facebook recently, and there's a huge amount of variables in the middle, right? Like, so ROI is going to depend on what your goals are for the company. Like, you need to know where you're going first, and each platform is going to have different metrics for this, but they're also used for different courses along the marketing zone. So you can measure it at the entire marketing budget zone. You can measure it per platform. You can measure it per campaign, per ad. Like, you can keep going down the funnel, right? So I like, ROI should absolutely be measured at these levels, but they need to be couched with expectations. A company that has been around for 20 years, advertising with the same budget that somebody who's been around 2 years, they're wildly different things. And so the ROI is, of course, going to be less if you've just hopped into the market. You're still building trust with your market. And this is something that people have a tendency to forget in the grand scheme of things is, yeah, there's the call today and there's the lead, right? But are you truly building a presence? Are you actually advertising and telling the story of your company and trying to convince people? And like, the way that I think of it is, it's a lot like dating. Like, you wouldn't walk into a room and just be like, yo, let's get married, right?
Right.
What you want to do is you want to sit there and be like, hi, let me get to know you. Here's for you to get to know me. I'm going to put these things out there. I'm going to look attractive. I'm going to be trying to court the user down until they convert. And a lot of people are a lot of plumbing right now, because demand is down. Like, they're all going straight for conversion, which makes sense. They're all freaking out. But they're, because of that, that's super expensive. And that's PPC. Like, PPC is really expensive right now. But you're forgetting all the parts that come before. You know, all the work,
Now, I
all
hear
the
rumor, Tyler, that 70% of the buyers make the decision before they make the phone call. Do you think that's true or not?
I do. I mean, whether or not that's accurate, I don't know. But um I've been in advertising since 2004, and it was before we had, like, the only lead gen source really was the phone book, right?
Mhm.
So it was radio and television that got me into this game. And I saw that those with a bigger budget, those who would change out their creative on a at least monthly basis, like, and the people who were consistent, they're the ones who always won the customers. And the best clients that we ever had when we were advertising, like, statewide here, were the ones who would just keep at it. And they were building their awareness. They understood that it was like, you layered on people over time. You don't just immediately own the zone. You have to build into it. And so that's where I think you get those people who are making the decision ahead of time. And realistically, if you're a plumber, you don't want to gather up the person who doesn't have a plumber, because then you got to get them on a lead gen source, and you're going to be paying anywhere from, $60, maybe up to $500 for that user. Whereas if you have them come to you because you've been talking to them and taking care of them and trying to make a presence known, they come to you chosen. So then also higher prices, easier close rates because of that. And so
So I'm going to ask you a really stupid question, but I'm going to ask anyway. How long does it take for marketing to work?
okay, so
I'm sure not the first person ever asked that question, right?
Mhm. I think it depends on what you're doing. Number one, like a ad that just says like expert plumber in this town is very different than an ad that says like, hey, we're the best plumbers you could hire today, right? Those are two very different things when it comes to how you're appealing to who is essentially the audience, which ends up being most cases for residential service,
Right.
housewife. And so like how long does it take one to work over the other depends on your creative and how much money is behind it. How many times? Frequency matters. Like radio was 5 to 7 times. I think digital touch points could be anywhere from 15 to 24. Like, because they're so fleeting. You just have to do this. You don't have people captive for 30 seconds like the old days. So it like it varies, but typically when we say you're going to try something new in marketing, try it for 3 months. If you try it for 1 month and you're gone, or you try a mailer in one neighborhood and then you're gone, all you're doing is saying, hey, look at me. And then you're scurrying off into the dark and
Right.
nobody actually cares. And that's
Right.
not how you build relationships, right? You got to be there frequently. You got to go to the same parties. So that's what I think people need to be doing.
Okay. Now, for plumbers, can you give me some kind of case studies of people you've worked with and how it's made a difference?
Yeah. So the best one is the one that got me into focusing with plumbers, which is my brother's company. And so it's in town here. It's Prospector Plumbing. Owner is Jared Williams, and he started with nothing, and now he's beyond 5 million and still like going forth, right? So he's got 4 or 5 vans on the road, and there's companies who are bigger, but we kind of sit in the sector of like the earlier stages for what we like to serve. And he really, because he was one of usually in marketing you get people who've been in business for a while and they're like, hey, yeah, can you do these things for me? The difference here was I got to start at the beginning and see the difference that our steps made along the way.
Right.
Biggest thing that contributed to his success was a little bit of fearlessness that still made me nervous as his marketer, as his brother and his marketer, right? But also pricing. It costs money to get customers. And if you're not willing to spend any money to get customers, you're not going to be able to get them. And so you can get them slowly over time, like very slowly through word of mouth, but it depends on what your goals are. If you want to build a company and you don't want to just be a man in a van, you've got to advertise. Like it's just part of the nature of things. And if you aren't advertising, think about how many other companies in your market are. So, but watching him grow, like we did his branding, we did all of his Facebook, his website, all that, and seeing it take off from zero, and the choices along the way that sort of influenced that. It was fun. And he's my favorite because I got the most control, be honest.
I guess that's your brother. I
So,
mean, well, I look at plumbers are not traditionally technically oriented unless they're, a VC guy that comes into a market and has 5 million bucks and wants to own the county. But
yeah.
in most cases, they're tradesmen or craftsmen that have started a plumbing company for whatever reason. And now they went from a guy in a truck to owning a company, and marketing is generally not in their brain. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think some of them come to it knowing what they want to do, but they don't quite understand the scale that they need to do it by. For instance, I was on a console earlier today. A guy was like, yeah, I've been spending money on Facebook, so I'm hoping that'll make a difference. I'm like, how much are you spending? He's like, I'm spending $300 into all of Fort Worth, Texas. I'm like,
Ha,
that's not going
good
to do
luck with
anything.
that.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was like, you need to adjust your expectations. And you're right. A lot of them are tradesmen. Like they didn't grow up in this world. They didn't learn this world. They're also used to a world where if you take an action, you get a reaction immediately. And marketing is not that because you're fostering a change in human behavior. And that
Right.
takes and
Tough.
consistency.
So how do you go about changing or converting or uplifting the craftsman to an entrepreneur? You must have to run into that problem, right?
I do. It's a lot of, I mean, I try and position like how marketing works well before they ever become a client, like through my stuff or talking to them
Mhm.
ahead of time. But for the most part, so what we do is we listen to all the calls on our end because we want to know what's going on with the campaigns. And so then that allows us to also listen in and go like, how is the owner picking up the phone? And if the owner is picking up the phone, hello, which I have heard, that's a big problem. Like,
Right.
and so we end up coaching them, really. Like, yeah, we offer marketing services, but a lot of times we're like, hey, here's what you need to be doing
So will
when
you
this.
help either train the salesman or, I mean, once the phone rings, say, at least got to answer the damn phone. I mean, hello, and you got to see your company. Do you help people with that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So what we do is I wouldn't call it full on training, but it's sort of like light touch, like, hey, you need to be thinking about this. Like I train my account managers to watch out for these situations. And then what they do is they end up imparting that knowledge. And so we have some resources that we give out, like a call flow, being like, hey, here's the like 4 types of calls that might come in, and here's how you should deal with them. A good example is no matter what company you are, where you are, you will eventually get a call for a competitor. Somebody who thinks they're calling their plumber that they normally call, and they call you. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, is this Ed's plumbing? I'm like, no, this is Sally's plumbing. Okay, bye. And that's it.
Right.
Like, and so it's really important that you train your CSRs, the people that answer the phone, to act as salespeople and be as helpful as possible at all costs, right? So you get the phone call, is this Ed's plumbing? Oh, well, no, it is not. However, we have room on the schedule today. Why don't you tell me what's going on? And then you start going, well, I've got blah, blah, blah. And I listened to a client call probably about a month ago. Owner picked up, he converted the call, and it was beautiful. And then he
Mhm.
had a water heater job that he would have missed if he just handled it the wrong way, or just went
Right.
like, oh no, that's not me, goodbye. And that
You
happens
know,
more often than I would like, to be
so
honest.
if you're looking at everybody's saying, well, what is it? What is cost per sale? Do you have any kind of rough figures? I'm going to say, what's your average sale in plumbing? I'm guessing what, 5,000? I'm just coming up with a number.
It varies. Is it service work? Is it installs? um like you're talking about the average ticket for the plumber.
Yeah.
For service work, I mean, you could be anywhere from $600. Well, I mean, I've talked to some people who are like $300, all the way up to $1,200. Right. And it depends on their hourly rate. And honestly, a lot of the market is priced so low that it's difficult for them to afford to run a business for a long time. They got to get a
Right.
huge customer base with recurring like use before they ever get to a point where they can afford to do anything new. So a lot of times it's these guys stuck in a van and they're like, why can't I get ahead? Um,
Right.
so, but for like to the acquisition of a customer, that that really depends where you're averaging yourself, right? So companies that have been around a long time, you can get customers for your average cost per lead. If you include all your organic from repeat business coming in, that can be like 150 bucks, somewhere in there. But if you're brand new, you might be sitting at maybe like 2, 3, 400. It all kind of depends on what you're doing in the grand scheme of things.
Mhm.
There's a ton of variables into it. And like as a marketing agency, our job is to take in those variables and go, can we make this lower? Like everybody wants the cheaper customer, and we do too, because it allows us more room to reach more people. But
Right.
it doesn't happen without collecting data first. Like we have to run the ads. We got to know what your volume is. We got to see what's coming in over a period of time. This is why you run for 3 months. And then we can start putting in mechanisms that go like, well, okay, what happens if we do X, Y, or Z? Are we making a dent? And usually the foundation of your customer list is growing as we're doing those, right?
Okay.
So naturally it'll get cheaper, but we want to facilitate word of mouth. We want to drive people to you in mass, right?
Right.
We want to drive new customers. And the better your reputation, like if
So,
you got 3 stars
so
on.
I've heard maybe that Google's getting smarter about telling, instead of just keywords, it's, do you answer the phone? Do you get good positive reviews? They're trying to AI is getting better at evaluating how you're doing as a business. Are you supporting the baseball team? Are you member of the Chamber of Commerce, Better Business Bureau, all that other stuff. So how is the game changing with AI as you see it?
Like you said, I think smarter is the way to look at it. Which honestly makes you focus on the things that matter, not just to AI, but to the customer as well, which is good. That's a win, right?
Mhm.
So now you're not just trying to make the computer happy, you're making the user happy, which makes the computer happy. So in, like you mentioned, one of the biggest things was like links. Links are something that people would go out and try and get from all these sources, and it didn't matter where. And now like Google's starting to weight links that are relevant to your geography for a local service business, right? And then the other places that you're seeing the AI kick in are like local service ads, where your speed to lead on that platform is what's going to matter on your ranking, not your budget. And that's because Google wants their users to be taken care of. So then they continue to get the eyeballs so they could resell you the advertising.
Mhm.
That's how they make money. So the AI is coming into effect there. You got performance max campaigns, you got all these things. And what I think on the advertising front, what I think is going to happen the most is targeting is going to get easier, but creative is going to get more important because of that. And so, because it's really easy to set up like a Google PPC campaign and hit the wrong buttons and things go, suddenly you're getting a whole bunch of like trash collection calls.
Right.
And so, because garbage disposal, right? So, but the AI is helping us by basically saying like, what's your intent? It's gotten better at understanding what we want. And I think that we're going to see a whole bunch of changes on that, where the mechanics of setting up a campaign are going to become less convoluted, which makes guys like me go, well, I need to pivot into better creative and meeting your customers where they want to be met, and
Right.
making
So,
sure that
so
we're
it's more about, in the past, it was about making the computer happy. Now it's more about making the customer happy. Is that accurate?
yeah. I think when you're looking at lead gen, yeah, like it was so mechanical, and honestly, humans don't respond well to mechanics, they respond well to relationships. So
Right.
I think that's going to change.
So how
And
fast do you answer the phone? How many positive Google reviews you get, your correspondence, your community participation?
mhm.
It's not an AdWord. I mean, it's just not doing Heather by AdWords. It's like all of that matters now, right?
I think it's because you got to remember, Google wants to connect their users with companies who take care of their users. And it's going to be the same across any search engine and any platform. Because of that, being a good company positions you better to having good presence.
Okay.
So if, and this is something where if an owner is looking at their company and they're like, man, this part of our service, and be humble about it. If this part of our service doesn't work, what do we do to fix that? If you're
Right.
getting bad reviews at a regular clip, take that hit, go fix your service. And over time, you'll have a better reputation. Google will notice and your community will
But
notice.
all of that, you also have to convince your customer to give you reviews, because you can
Mhm.
do a great job, but if your customer doesn't review, how's Google going to know?
So there's a bunch of mechanics behind that that actually help. The biggest problem is people ask once and then they walk away. And so they either ask when they're leaving the home, or they ask when somebody pays the invoice and they text it to them or get them in an invoice. But most of those people are doing something else. You got to remind them. So drop them in an email sequence campaign with like 4 to 5 emails, maybe a text campaign that goes like, thank you for being awesome. We really appreciate you. We need the feedback to serve this town even better. Why don't you, if you wouldn't mind, please leave us a review. And then if somebody responds to that link or clicks on it or whatever, you take them out of the sequence, but like ask more than once. You usually don't get the sale on the first ask anyway. And that's what you're doing here. It's just another leg of the sales break program.
Right.
So
So if you have happy customers, they're not leaving you Google reviews, it's not as good as if they do significantly, right?
absolutely. The hard thing about Google reviews, I'm not necessarily a fan of everybody turning into a star rating. Google reviews, um, in particular, Google cares about flow, but your prospects care about quality. So it's important on two ends. Google wants to know you're active and that people are using you, but your customers are the ones who really go, oh, wow, this one's 4.8, 4.9, and has, 1,000 reviews, whereas these other guys are 3.5 and have 100 reviews. That's a big difference in the way they weight you. And that's where
Right.
credit comes in.
So it's important to take the effort, if customers like you, to help them help you, because if they don't leave you, I mean, I've been guilty of that. Like I figure, well, if I don't get a bad review, then no review is fine, but no review isn't fine because if you've helped 50 customers and nobody reviews you, how the hell are you going to know it, right?
Absolutely. So there's a little danger here that we are on the precipice of. Be very careful about incentivizing reviews or gating reviews because Google doesn't want you to. It's against their terms of service. And if somebody leaves a review and they mention that and their AI picks it up, you can get your Google business listing suspended.
So you're not going to pay them for them, but you can encourage them to give them, right?
Yeah. Like, don't do a trade for reviews. Just ask them for their honest opinion. Take the
Right.
good with. So,
Okay. That sounds good.
yeah.
So if you're a plumbing company and you want more customers, it sounds like Tyler, you're a good person to call, right?
Well, I'm biased, but sure. Yeah.
Okay. So, so how do they get in touch with you, Tyler?
So websites, I've got two, and those are the best. TylerWilliams.net and Mammoth4Plumbers.com. Both of those will lead you directly to me. And there's a link to schedule a consultation. That book's right on my calendar. And really, I use those consults because it's a vetting process, but I want to give people useful info. So if you're really early, cool, you walk away with some initiatives and some priorities. If you're somebody that we think that we can help, well, then we'll tell you our packages, but you still walk away with the list of priorities. And anyway, so that way you have I like to educate. I like people to know what they're in for when they need to market. And so I try and make them
And
really
you've
useful.
worked with a lot of plumbing companies, I assume, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, you're looking at the list all total over time, maybe we're up to 50, like when we're still growing. But like
Wow.
our existing base currently is smaller than that. That includes guys who've moved around or moved on or shut down or whatever, or sold. That all that stuff happens. So, but
Cool.
it's a ball. I like it.
And I would say it's really good because you've taken the leap to be in a niche, right? A lot of marketing companies say, well, I work for contractors and I also work for insurance agencies and, you know, whatever, anybody that wants to get more stuff, I'm there. And I think the fact you've had the guts to narrow to a very, very narrow market means you must be, if you're a plumber, they should probably call you, bottom line.
It has helped us dramatically streamline our processes to help our customers better. That's the
Right.
beauty of niching down.
Because you don't have to be you're a really good expert in one thing. You're not an expert in 5 other different kinds of markets. You know plumbers really well, right?
When I made that shift, my staff got real happy because it made their jobs a lot easier.
Right.
So,
Cool. That sounds great. Well, thanks, Tyler. I appreciate your time. And if you're a plumber, call Tyler because that's what he knows.
all right. Thank you.